Hi, I'm Murtaza.
And I'm Savannah. Welcome to GTM Bantercast. I have seen tons of go-to-market strategies that look perfect on paper until they hit a real sales call. So the question is how do we bridge that gap?
And I've seen, Savannah, a lot of good strategies put together on slides in a boardroom that really don't pass the execution test. So let's unpack all of that and cover that as a part of Bantercast.
Let's do it.
So, Savannah, what does the gap look like to you when we talk about the gap between strategy and execution? How do you see it happening at your level?
Yeah, it's a good question. Of course, there's so many different examples that we can go about this because every day as a sales rep, we get thrown different ideas how we have to test out. A new quarter rolls around. They have these new priorities or new ideas for the team. And an easy example that I can think of that comes top of mind every time, we have this conversation is simply dial metrics. And here's what I mean by that. Let me explain. A lot of sales teams have this idea that we have to hit a certain dial metric every day in order to, achieve our goal or to achieve our quota. And it's part of our expectations as a sales rep, which I totally get. However, every sales rep, especially nowadays with social selling, I understand that social selling wasn't as prominent back in the day, but now it is a major source for booking meetings in the software sales industry, or the SaaS industry, I should say. And so I think when leaders or strategies get put in place where we have to hit a certain dial metric every day, it could take away from a sales rep who is really excellent at booking on LinkedIn. However, LinkedIn does take a lot of time. So what I would say is someone like myself who is super strong on social selling, I've noticed that, for example, 80 dials a day isn't necessarily as effective as the leaders might believe it is, or as the numbers would show in those spreadsheets, because for me, I'm able to convert LinkedIn meetings much quicker than I can on the phone. I'm still good on the phone, but I think that it's the balance of understanding that each rep has their own outlet of booking meetings, and it's important to implement that into the strategy. But that's kind of where the gap lies, is being able to understand those little niche aspects of each sales rep and applying that to the strategy.
Yeah. And that's where your execution tactics come in, right? That's where the input from your level up to the leadership comes in when they're forming that strategy. What in your view would be the better way to look at it instead of dials?
I definitely think dials are important. I want to emphasize on that because I have seen, where they say every no leads to a yes. And that is true, especially with the phones, which is why it is important to kind of hammer out the phones, as they say. But I think rather than implementing something where we're mandated those 80 dials a day, whether we're running dry on our cadences or we're searching high and low for people to call just to hit that number, I think for someone like myself, and I'm sure there are other reps out there who really find quality over quantity is important. And so I think dialing is important and should be emphasized, but I think there's other ways to, measure success. So it could be, how many connects did you have today, both on the phones and on LinkedIn? How many conversations did you have, rather than how many phone calls did you pick up and actually make and let the phone ring?
Great point. So outcomes more so than input alone is what you're thinking about, right? That should be part of the strategy on what is the outcome that we are able to get.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, I do think that those numbers do matter. We're in sales. Numbers is like the biggest part of the game, but outcome and each of those little wins along the way should matter more than just, a dial metric in your CRM.
Very true. Yep. And the strategy or the gap in strategy isn't always at the execution level. For instance, activity metrics, the example that I gave, it's the gaps sometimes occur at even higher levels, right? To give you an example, a long time ago, I had to learn a lesson the hard way about the impact of comp plans on the incentive that people have to overperform. And what we noticed when we issued a new comp plan that was actually financially pretty savvy, which made the outcome of our sales and BDR teams very predictable. But it also had a negative impact that it didn't incentivize them to overperform. There weren't too many incentive for them to go beyond 100, and it was one of those famous plans that that kind of gives people an incentive to make sure that they're hitting 50%, 70%, and so on, all the way till 100%. But once they get to 100% and above, there weren't too many accelerators kicking in and things of that nature till they achieved a much higher goal as well. So that incentive to overperform wasn't there. And that left a strategic gap that was not anticipated, was not planned. All the planning that took place was primarily from the financial view of it and not from the execution and the sales view of it, right? So it could happen at both levels. It could happen at how we're finding the business or how we're incentivizing the team. And those are all part of the GTM strategy that any good leader should always be thinking about.
Yeah, I've actually seen that happen myself. From the other side of the table, though, you've seen it with the perspective of this is the strategy I've inputted and here are the results. And I've seen it from the perspective of what's going through the sales team's mind as they get those new comp plans. And it's definitely interesting to see. And you and I are very open, and I've been able to hear your perspective, but it's kind of crazy when we talk out loud about, the different perspectives.
Yeah. And I think the ultimate measure from my end is the mood amongst the people when they get a new comp plan. I think there's always people who are critical of a comp plan. They always look at it with a sense of suspicion that, oh, there's a catch here, or we're not going to make all the money in here. But the volume of critical comments, I wouldn't say negative, but critical comments, or the volume of questions and the nature of those questions, I feel is directly proportional to the effectiveness of the comp plan. I find when people are starting to ask questions about what happens when they overachieve versus questions about how they're supposed to overachieve, that kind of starts painting the picture. And I think this is a really appropriate time to think about it with the new year. And for some companies, the new fiscal is going to start in February. So a good time for leaders to think about how they can get a pulse on the impact of comp plan just based on the questions that they're getting from their teams. And I'll tell you one more thing. One of the secrets of having a comp plan that's well adopted is having some level of input from the first line managers, kind of giving them a little bit of a preview of, this is coming your way. How do you feel about it? I've had the pleasure of working with some really amazing first line managers who've been extremely open. I'm saying this is crap. I hate this. Versus, sometimes they'd be like, this is interesting. How do we figure this out and how do we work on this together? Right. So, I feel as, second line leaders and above, if they can get a pulse from their first line leaders on what's coming their way, that's going to help them even more.
Yeah. And I've definitely seen in the past where, of course, in a position like mine or as a super, super junior sales rep, which I was at one point, you don't have any say when it comes to your comp plan, really. And so I've witnessed people receive their comp plans at the start of a new year and quit because of it or stop trying because of it. And it definitely has an impact on the business and also on the team as a whole. And everyone kind of from all ends of the spectrum can feel that energy. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you're absolutely right. It is crazy how the day the comp plan drops, you kind of get a feel of this is how the year's going to look.
It's either going to be really good or really bad, and there's no in between.
Yeah, that's so true. Now, I think one of the things that you're talking about over there is making me think about collaboration, right? How do you collaborate with your leaders?
Yeah, good question. I mean, why don't you tell the story of why we're here today? Because I feel like that explains perfectly how I collaborate with my leaders. The reason you and I are doing this is because you were once a leader of mine. And personally, I have always felt very comfortable being open and honest and transparent with my leaders. I think that's a really quick way to build trust. And so I take pride in being able to do that. But I know that not everyone is comfortable in doing so. But I'm just pretty quick to asking the right questions and making sure that I understand where certain strategies or goals are coming from before questioning them. I think that's the number one step, is to understand. And then if from there I still don't understand or I don't agree with what's being placed in front of us, then it's just a matter of, going to my manager or my leader. I work at a small startup now, so even going to the CEO of my company and asking the questions and giving my input and hearing what other people have to say. I think it's just a matter of, being open and transparent. And if that doesn't work, then I don't know what will.
Yeah, I've always joked about this, but you were one of the most curious reps on your team, and always had always had great question. I think I shared it with you much later that one of the feedback we got when you were onboarding was Savannah has a lot of questions. But we were really excited that you had a lot of questions, because that meant you were engaged, you were eager, and you were willing to learn. And then beyond onboarding, that was, I think, one of the good things that, like you said, that you've always managed to have a open, transparent relationship and share your thoughts in a safe environment. And that's been a key to collaboration as well. But have you ever felt, or maybe heard, maybe not directly in your case, but maybe heard from someone that sometimes that level of openness is not well received?
Yeah, I have. I have never personally felt, victimized to that, where I've asked a question and thought to myself, oh, I shouldn't have asked that question. I'm pretty cautious about that. And I feel like I always try to build that relationship first before diving into the personable questions. Or, when I used to come to you and sit with you one-on-one, I think that we had already built that relationship. So it wasn't like it was coming out of nowhere. But I definitely have seen, reps be afraid to speak up, and then they do speak up, and the feedback is not well received, or they don't know how to go about it. So it's built up and then it comes off as angry or frustrated rather than just concerned or wanting to know where we can go better. And so, it definitely happens more than not, where I think reps don't know how to properly communicate to their leaders what they're thinking and how things can get better. And so there's a huge gap there. Like, that shouldn't be, of all the things in sales that we're worried about, quota, hit your quota. But I don't think worrying about, being able to communicate with leadership about certain strategies should be a gap or a concern.
So Savannah, you've brought up some really good points about how to have that engagement and how to have that openness with your leader. One of the things that I would like you as an individual who's growing in your career, as well as others who are starting, perhaps, everybody to think about how to form that relationship with their leader, right? You got to have that level of openness. You got to set almost that expectation of how you're going to work with your first line manager. And it applies the same way to, if I'm a senior leader, if I'm a C-suite, VP, whatever, whoever's reporting to me, I expect them to have that level of openness, that if they're critical of something, if they're not happy about something, or if they have concerns about something, or just new ideas altogether, they should feel comfortable to be able to share that with me, right? And I think in the early stage of your career, just forming that habit of treating your manager almost like your job counselor, your work counselor, goes a long way, where you establish that safe space of working together.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely feel like I did that in my very first job right out of school, is build that type of relationship with my manager where it was very much a safe space. Of course, my quota is her quota, and if I win, she wins, vice versa. But in terms of being able to openly ask questions and be aligned and be honest with her, I think that allowed me to see a lot of success early on. and also get an understanding too of kind of where leadership's head was at, which now gives me a new appreciation for it. Whereas rep who's not as close with their manager and it's just numbers based relationship, I don't think they have that perspective as much. And I kind of think back to sports. It's an easy one to relate it to, but you know, a really high performing sports team or a super, super successful sports team that wins consistently is a team that's going to be really aligned all around, right? The forward are aligned with the defenseman. The goalie knows what's going on, and everyone is working as a team to be aligned to win that game. And I think that in sales, if you're not aligned, you're not going to win the game. Like, you have to make sure that you're aligned with your manager, you're open, you're upfront, you're able to communicate about almost anything. Still with a level of respect, making sure you're not blurring the lines between the relationship of this is still my higher up, this is still my manager. Right. But again, that manager, their win is your win, and you are a team at the end of the day. And I think that being aligned and having that relationship that goes deeper than just a numbers based relationship is where you will see the most success.
Yeah, that's why they call it a sales playbook, because it requires that level of alignment to execute across all elements of the business and all parts of the team, right? So any good stories you want to share about the most well-aligned manager that you worked with?
I mean, there's one that really comes to mind, and I would say, I don't know if I can say her name on here. I'm not sure.
You said her, that's probably a giveaway.
Yeah, I'll just say her. And something right off the bat with her was particularly that I built that relationship and I was hitting my numbers, but there were certain things and changes that I wanted to improve. For example, at that company, I was the very first SDR to really start implementing social selling and LinkedIn outreach. And that was an idea that I loved and I was finding a lot of success in, but there was no real playbook for the LinkedIn social selling. And so when I started to see success, I went to my manager and I started telling her about what I was doing, and she adjusted her expectations with me about phone and emails because she knew I was seeing so much success on LinkedIn. And at the end of the day, she still had high expectations from me, right? She wanted to see me hit 120% every month, if not more. But we were able to be very transparent on, Savannah, where are your 40 dials in the afternoon? Oh, I've been doing 3 hours of LinkedIn and I got you these 2 meetings. Or, when the comp plan changed in the new year and we had new dial metrics assigned to us, or we got a new platform for cold calling and we had to deal with the sequencing. I think that it was a really big adjustment for me because it was so new. And so, and listen, you've seen it. I'm sure it's probably a big adjustment when you change platforms for everyone, not just people who are super new to role, but I feel like aligning with my manager gave me the opportunity to, really see success early on and also hone in on my expertise, which is social selling. So I owe a lot of credit to her because I think that she really helped me develop that skill.
Yeah.
Would you say you have any personal stories as a leader where you aligned with a rep and you had that extra special relationship more so than numbers?
Yes. There were a few people who used to reporting to me, with whom I would have a very open relationship. And I think I can think of less than 3 people or 4 people that I've managed with whom I've had this kind of relationship where I could be completely unfiltered and not impolite, but unfiltered. Mm-hmm. And they could have the same with me. And we would then come to a good conclusion. And when we'd walk out of that meeting, we'd still be laughing about what we talked about and what we want to do and all of that stuff. But there's only very few people. And part of the reason was that we all understood the level of pressure we were dealing with. We all understood some of the critical deliverables we would have, and this was just to give you a perspective. This was at a role at Oracle when we were dealing with acquisitions and all of that kind of stuff, and very, very high pressure. Right? So sales is one level of pressure, acquisition, M&A, and kind of M&A integration, that's second level of pressure. And some of that could be very intense. So within some of those teams, we could sit down, we could just have a really open, like heart to heart, sometimes with raised voices, and just
Passion.
be, yeah,
Raise
just be candid, pragmatic, passionate, but respectful. And it's a tough balance to get to. And there's only, like I said, there's only a handful of people who I can think of who have that relationship with me. But those are your right and up, right? Those are the people who are like, wherever I go, I want them to be working with me. And those are also the people I'm still in touch with, from like 10 years ago. I would still wish them Happy New Year, and they would still tell me about the new baby they're welcoming in the world and things like that. So we still maintain that relationship because it's almost like we've been in the trenches together.
I have to ask, you said 3. Are you saying only 3 in your entire career? Because you've been in this industry for longer than I've been alive. So
Yes.
you're telling me 3 or 4, you can't even count it on one hand, really.
I cannot even count it on one hand of the people with whom I can enjoy it. I've had that relationship. There's a bunch of people with whom I've had very good relationship. But there's only 3 or 4 people with whom I've had that relationship of them just sitting down and just completely open themselves up. And I think it's primarily because a lot of times, there's this whole thought of like the ivory tower versus down, further away from leadership. That kind of becomes a question where people start assuming that the higher up you are, the more senior you are as a leader, you're sitting up in the ivory tower. But like you said, this is, at the end of the day, this is kind of like a game. This is a sport. And I've always approached it that way. You guys have heard me talk with the Formula One analogies over and over again, right?
Oh, I can't say that's straight.
But I genuinely feel it like that. Like the salespeople to me are the amazing drivers out there, and my job is to help build the cars that help you guys win the race, right? So unless and until you don't have those open conversation about why the car is not working for you, or me giving feedback of why I feel you're not operating the car right, which could become which could become a very emotional discussion as well, right? Unless and until you don't open up in that way to your leaders, and then the leaders to whoever is further up from them, you really can't get to where you need to be to bridge that gap that we're talking about between strategy and execution.
Yeah. And I also just want to add, I'd like to think that I'm one of those 3 people with you. Am I?
I would say you're definitely one of the most amazing reps that I've worked with in terms of that relationship. I was thinking about direct reports, and you and I didn't have a direct reporting relationship, right?
No.
But we did enjoy amazing. Like I would say you're certainly amongst the people I'd count on my one hand when it comes to the amazing reps that I work with.
And you're someone I would count on my one hand too. So look at us.
But hey, you've only.
I know it's fine. It's fine. It's not the same. I have 3 years of experience. You have 25, but it's fine. Nonetheless, mattered to me that much. Okay.
I appreciate it. And that's why we're here together, right?
Exactly. That makes me laugh.
All right. So, so we kind of talked about collaboration. We kind of laid the groundwork for what this conversation's about, right? What Bantercast is all about. What do you see for somebody who has just given us time today and gone through this entire conversation with us? What do you see is the value that they're going to take away from here?
Well, I think these are conversations that people are scared to have, and not just scared to have, but also conversations that are not discussed enough. And I think that if you and I are openly being candid and talking about these gaps that are evidently there in a lot of sales organizations. I think it's, a great thing where people can engage and give comments and agree, disagree, give us new ideas to talk about. And I think it's going to be a great place where people can come to, or not people, sales leaders of all industries can come and sit and listen for 30 minutes and see if they're aligned with us, and maybe, gain a takeaway. As a rep, someone watching might hear your perspective as a leader and take something new away, and then vice versa. A leader might listen to what I have to say and, feel like there's some valuable information here. So I think that it's a good place to start when we're looking to bridge that gap.
Right. So we're going to get guests, right? We're going to have other people join in. It's just not going to be the Savannah Murtaza show.
Too bad, hey?
So
No.
we're going to have a bunch of other people join in, share their opinions, share their ideas, challenge us as well. I'd love, I actually enjoy learning new things from people. So it'll be fun to see what other people are doing in their world to make go-to-market effective.
Yeah.
And then hopefully out of all of that, we can start learning about some new things, some new frameworks, maybe get a lot of good stories that help people find their next gear. What do you think about sharing information about tools to help people be more effective?
I think that's a great idea, and we should definitely do that. We should be open about the tools we're using. And I've noticed actually people on LinkedIn these days are very upfront about, here are the top 5 tools that I would recommend using for your BDR team if you're growing, or here are the top 5 tools I would recommend you don't use if you want, an easy onboarding with your BDR team. So I think if we pull on some good guests, we can get them to talk about, tools they've used, tools they've liked, not liked, and just continue to open up that conversation on how their go-to-market strategy can be executed. And also, you and I are still in the trenches a little bit, and it's a good way for us to take that information and apply it to our day-to-day on the side of this in real life work. So
yeah,
I think
for anybody who is listening, if you have recommendations on tools, let us know. Drop us a DM, and we'd love to know what is that one amazing tool that you find super awesome, super effective, super helpful in your day-to-day execution, whether that be on prospecting, on deal management, on building relationship in an account management role, whatever that may be. Just share that feedback.
Data enrichment. That's
Data enrichment, is that important these days?
just a little. We'll talk more about that.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. And that I think that's a really good segue into introing our second episode, Savannah, because we are going to be talking about ICP, or Ideal Customer Profile.
Yeah.
And I recently conducted, just last month, the last thing I did before I went on my vacation was I conducted a workshop for this organization, a private equity company, where I met their GTM leaders, and we walked them through how to think about ICP and how to develop a good ICP, or a dynamic ICP, as we've been calling it. And the importance of data is pretty much at the core of it all. So I'm excited about having that conversation and sharing some stories related to that. And we'll dig more into ICP for next time.
I'm excited to talk about it too. We actually just had an internal meeting about the ICP focus going into 2026. It's right up there with probably the most important thing of the year. So it's a priority for me in my day to day, and it's a good thing for us to start unpacking next time, though.
Yes, we'll save it for later. This has been fun. How are you feeling about it?
Love it. So much fun. Always nice to sit down and chat with you and, pick your brain. I feel like we have very similar ideas of what works and what doesn't, but also different perspectives because we're in different positions. And I'm excited to continue the conversation and to start engaging with the people who are going to watch and keep it going.
Awesome. Well, everybody who's tuned in, thanks for that. Thanks, Savannah. And stay tuned, everybody, for round 2 showing up. We'll talk about ICP. Till then, it's goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me, too.